Okay, so we were talking also about the Big Six at that time, and then Johnny Campbell kind of got involved. Or how did that all? Did he see you at a Big Six, or?
Yeah, that's what I was saying at LACR. I don't remember if he was in that race or if he was watching that race where I came from the intermediate line and passed all but Tilly in that race. And but yeah, I kind of sparked his attention. He grabbed him for a second, and so then that year, the end of '04, he invited me along to they were doing a mileage trip for the Baja 1000 that year, and so he invited me along, and I was like, I don't know, I think I was almost 6 foot by then, but I was only like 140 pounds riding this big old XR 650 down the Baja Peninsula. So that was definitely an experience. And then from there, yeah, he offered me support on American Honda, and I remember actually being torn because I was so passionate about motocross and wanted to make it as a motocross racer. I'm like, oh man, is this really worth it? And I remember thinking when I signed it, I'm like, all right, well, I can get some bikes, so I'll sign this and race some off-road stuff, but it'll help my motocross career. Thinking that support would kind of transfer over and I'd be able to race some motocross and stuff. But honestly, I just fell in love with the off-road side of it, and especially on compared to the amateur scene, because the amateur scene for motocross for me is, you're at the track all day and you get two motos and maybe four if you have two classes, and they're 5-6 minute motos, maybe
Yeah.
10 if you're lucky. And so I really enjoyed the longer distance Grand Prix, and once you get a taste of Baja, you're hooked.
Do you think that should change the motocross formats of this? You know, uh, race at 9 a.m. and then wait all day till 4 p.m. Do you think like there should be some progression in the way promoters do these races?
I do. It's not something I've spent a lot of time thinking about, so honestly, off the top of my head, can't really, I can't armchair quarterback and give my take on how it should be.
Yeah.
But I feel like there is a progression I think that needs to happen. I mean, I don't know if it's splitting the days between a youth program and an adult program, or just finding some way just to get a little more quality instead of trying to stuff so much quantity.
Hmm.
I mean, that's the American way, is quantity over quality, but I think people are starting to realize that the quality matters. And
Yeah, yeah, because I remember in my 20s would go to I did some of these races where I didn't get out of I mean you would get up at 4:30 in the morning, pack your
mm,
stuff, drive out, sign up, practice, maybe race in the morning, and then you're not getting home till like 9 p.m. Some guys dig that, and I think that's a part of like our culture about this motorcycle racing industry. But I don't know. I think that could turn off a lot of people as far as, there's so many things that you could do on a Saturday, you know, and us motorcycle guys, we're there like Saturday morning till Sunday night,
hmm
and I just think that,
well, look at how popular REM is, because you get there, when your practice is going to be pretty much,
yeah,
and so you get there at right at 8, and or maybe 7:30, and do your practice, do your motos. You're out of there by 2 or 3 at the latest,
yeah,
and you're having a good time with your buddies. I mean, it's not obviously that scenario can't translate into every amateur race, because they appeal to a different crowd, but it's just another way of doing things that shows that there is another way of doing things.
yeah. Okay, so back onto kind of with you and Johnny Campbell. So, what did you think of Johnny at that time? Like,
I mean, I thought he was a badass, because especially after the mileage run down to Baja, just because I'd been around Baja, I'd been down there a couple times just to watch, but I didn't realize, one, the speeds, and two, how scary it is, and three, just the adrenaline rush, and then how long it was too. And so it definitely opened my eyes, and I had nothing but respect for how much went into racing that series. And then I had a steep learning curve my first few races on that big 650. Like I said, I was maybe 140, 145 pounds on a 300-pound machine. And so that thing spit me off a few times. It was a huge learning curve. And for most of 2005, I was second guessing whether it was a good decision, because I spent, I think, more time on my head than I did on the bike. But then I remember It was the Nevada 1000. It was really cool. The Best in the Desert in 2005 did a multi, like kind of a stage race, a multi-day Nevada 1000. And so instead of the Vegas Torino, basically, it took the place of that. And that was kind of my breakout ride. I hung with, I want to say it was Esposito and Brian Brown that year on the KX 500s. And I was able to match their pace and was riding really well compared to Johnny and Steve at the time. And that was kind of the first time I felt like, okay, maybe I can make a go of this. Because up until then, I was just on my head and chasing my tail and getting kind of discouraged.
Yeah, and for those people that don't know about the XR650, I just did a whole series uh, back in this past summer. I'll put a link to all that. But the XR650 is pretty much like your dad says, is the trophy truck of motorcycles, you know. And if you ever want to run people over, or you know, that's the bike to do it on, because it's just a tank, and it hauls straight up ass. And those days, at that time, I was looking up to Johnny, and just to watch him go 100 miles per hour down the beach over there and down in Baja was pretty awesome, you know. And if you were young, in your 20s or in your teens, to witness that, that could pretty much set you into a direction to start racing motorcycles itself. You know, I was my first Supercross race was Jeff Ward's last Supercross race at Anaheim, and I don't even know what that was. What was that? 84, I think. But that was when cigarettes were like the sponsor.
Yeah, Camel Supercross.
Yeah, and you know, that was my first thing. But I didn't really pull into those guys. They weren't my heroes. I didn't pull into, like a lot of these people. They go to Anaheim and they're just like starstruck. It was cool, don't get me wrong, but my starstruck moment was Atalanto GP in 2000, and I was standing by one of the berms out there in that camping area. You know, back then the Atalanto Grand Prix was just kind of like
super sketchy.
Yeah, it was almost like one of the video games with. I mean, it was almost like
It was like
apocalyptic.
racing in Baja.
Yeah, it was like apocalyptic. There's like like the whole morning was filled with smoke and fog. And I remember being in this corner, and there was no races that went on yet. It was early in the morning. I signed up, and here comes Ty Davis on this YZ250 or whatever he was riding. I think it was Yamaha. Comes around, and then I hear this like this disgruntled hum in the distance, like, you know. I'm like, what's going on here? And it was quiet. There's no, you know how the pros back then, there was only like maybe 6 or 7, and they're all spread out. It was their parade lap, and this hum got more ugly and got louder as it got closer. And then I see him in the distance, Johnny Campbell on his XR650. Maybe at that time it was a 600, and he came into this corner, and he moved about maybe, I'd say like 2 truckfuls of dirt, like in this corner, and he just went, and it was just like spraying it all over the kids, and dirt hit me, and I was like, that guy, that just blew me away. That was my starstruck moment of like, I need to start racing. That just blew my mind. So that's my connection with Johnny Campbell, and he's the kind of guy that he's one that got me into off-road racing, and you know, so forth. But so you joined Johnny's team in 04, or was that 05?
Officially it was 05, yeah.
Yeah.
05 was my first year racing. And Bruce Ogilvie was a huge part of that too. And he was kind of, I guess you could kind of consider him the team manager. I mean, he was running the race through the research and development portion of Honda at the time. So he was kind of, you know, spearheading it, I suppose you could say. But yeah, he and Johnny kind of took a really big risk on me. And I mean, without them, I definitely wouldn't have had the career I have now, for sure.
Were you getting paid back then?
The first year, not really. I got expenses. So I mean, expenses to the races, and there were win bonuses, but I wasn't winning yet. And it was win only, so I wasn't really making any money the first year. It wasn't until like 2006 where I started getting a little bit of a taste of actually being a professional and making some money racing.
What was your first check? The amount?
I'd have to go back and look.
I mean, that's like what, 12 years ago? So
Yeah,
it's
it would have
probably
been 2006 San Felipe 250. I think was our first, mine and Kendall's first win. So I'd have to go back and look. I want to say it was like $3,000.
okay. And '07, you continued?
Yeah, '07 was a big year. That was probably when I look back at my career. '07 was one of my fondest because that's when I finished third in the Works Championship that year, and Kendall and I, and then along with Johnny and Steve Henscheveld, just crushed the Baja Series. It was, I mean, about as perfect as it could go. Especially that was the 40th anniversary of the Baja 1000, so it went all the way down to Cabo, and it was an extended Baja 1000 course. Like I said, all the way down to Cabo, and KTM brought their big 690, I want to say, out, and so it was the first time like another factory had come back into Baja since Cowie stepped out in '98 or '96, and so that was kind of a big deal with KTM coming into it, and we just, I mean, myself personally, I had like the perfect ride in my section on the northern part of the peninsula, and then Kendall had a perfect ride, Steve did, so did Johnny. It was one of those moments where just everything came together, and we had a lot of support from the Japanese in Honda too. I mean, they're just huge Baja buffs, and so a lot of them actually came over, took vacation time from working in Honda in Japan to come over and support us in the Baja 1000. So that was really cool to have a lot of them invested in it, and then to be able to have such a great ride. And I remember the big picture. There was probably like 40, 50 people, all in Honda shirts after the finish, holding up the number one with the two, both of our 450Xs there. No, it was a 450X and an XR650.
Yeah.
Um,
That was the last year for the 650.
no, '07 it was two 450Xs. I think '06 might have been the last year we did a 450X and a 650. But yeah, so it was '07, that whole big picture with the two 450Xs and all of us holding up the number one sign.
Yeah.
It was a cool moment.
So, what was that your last year with Johnny?
Then Johnny started JCR in
Because
2008.
Honda pulled out.
Yeah,
right?
Honda was pulling it back a little bit, and Bruce kind of saw the writing on the wall that a lot of the teams at that time were going more private, and so he helped Johnny. Between him and then Johnny formed the JCR Racing, and that was '08. I raced on the JCR team, and that was my last year with Johnny and on Honda.
What did you feel like when they pulled out?
As far as Honda,
Yeah, as far as like, did you kind of sense something was going on? Because I think that was the kind of the start of the downturn of the economy. Was '08, '07, '08? Did you, or were you like, nah, they're gonna do it, they have to?
Yeah,
or...
I mean, one they hadn't really pulled out yet, because I mean Johnny kept JC. I mean obviously JCR still going, and he kept it down in Baja for a few years, but I think our goals just kind of started to diverge because I wanted to race more American based. I had achieved a lot in Baja, and I wanted to kind of take a step back from Baja a little bit and try to race a little bit more American based primarily. And Johnny at the time, I mean, I was struggling with turning results. '08 wasn't a really good year. I mean, I had a great year in Baja again, but not in Works. But that's what I wanted to focus on. And so Johnny was made a business decision, and I mean, he had another good rider in Timmy Wiegand who was top 5 or podium guy in Works. So he basically said, look, I mean, he sat me down. I remember we actually were in Paris at a Mexican restaurant, and he sat me down and said, honestly, all I can offer you right now is Baja. And I said, I don't really want to race Baja. And so I mean, we parted amicably enough, and honestly, from the economy standpoint and things crashing, I was pretty naive to everything at that time.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really get any sense of that. And to be fair, too, the industry didn't either, because that next year in 2009, my first year on a Cowie, was the year that Bondo rode a privateer Cowie and was just crushing it with a contingency, making like $7,000 for winning a Works race just from Cowie.
Yeah.
You can make like 15 grand as a privateer just to win a Works race if you had a gear sponsorship and the Cowie money. It was crazy.
Yeah. I want to move on to you. Okay, so through all the Baja years, and you moved on with your dad to Precision Concepts. If you had to rewrite history, would there be any move you would have did back say in '06, '07, made any different changes as far as like maybe, or decisions as far as what you raced? Is there any like basically regrets?
Honestly, it's an interesting thing for me to talk about, and the biggest thing for me personally is it took me so long to figure out my own health and diet and how that affected my performance. And so I realize now why I was struggling so bad in '06, '07, '08, all the way up until 2011 basically. So if I had to change something, I would lean towards that. Um, but at the same time, all the struggles I went through led me to start to actually research stuff for myself and form my own opinions and just basically trial and error until I found what worked for me. And so, in all honesty, I really wouldn't take it back because it's led me to where I am now. And
It's kind of like that path that's built
exactly,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
if I would have had it handed to me, then I wouldn't have an appreciation for it to where I do now.
What would you? This is kind of everybody talks about this, but what would you tell kids now, young talent? Do you see them making those same things, or do you kind of look at them and go, if I did the same thing, they'll eventually figure it out? And when I say that, I'm talking about maybe the way they train, the decisions they make with their sponsors.
It's funny because I feel like the kids make the same decisions now that they always have because the underlying what's the word I'm looking for, like the underlying culture really hasn't changed much, but times are way different, and I feel like the consequences are a lot different. In the 90s and 2000s, I feel like you could make bad decisions and get away with it, whether it was a sponsor or whether it was with your health to some extent or training. You could get away with it a little bit more, but I feel like the consequences are bigger now. One, I think the bikes are faster, the speeds are faster, the bikes are heavier. The inertia of the bike means there's more consequences if
Yeah.
something goes wrong. So if you don't have the strength for the bike, the consequences are bigger if you get out of shape. Two, with the economy, especially the economy in the industry, the way it is, it's just too small of a pond to take advantage of anybody. And so, back in the 2000s, you could maybe get away with having a less than ideal personality or treating your sponsors less than ideally. And, they were making enough money that they didn't matter. It didn't matter as much, I would say. But now I think it's a lot more important because there's less money to go around. So you have to be a lot more critical and appreciative of how you treat your sponsors and how your sponsors treat you. And so, I mean, it's tough at times because you can feel like you put a lot of yourself into this, and then for a little bit of return at times, especially in the off-road side of our sport, because the money from Supercross, just trickles into the off-road side. So it's really tough as a professional trying to make a living in the off-road side of our sport. It's really tough, but it's
So
just
you
kind of the way it is.
basically, I mean, you guys got to really love it. I know exactly what you guys go through, and at times I shake my head. I'm like, why are they? It's like, man, it's almost disrespectful to say this to some people, but it's like I want to tell them get a job
Mm-hmm.
because they'd be more happier because when you, well, for example, there's the Bobby Garrison story. He hung it up and he went and became a firefighter, and he's a firefighter in Dallas. Last time I heard, and now he goes to races and he has all that talent.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny story was he showed up with a beat down YZ250, something like that, and nobody knew who he was at this local race. And Bobby's always been known to wear mismatched gear and so he showed up, and the promoters are like, hey, this is the pro line. I don't know. Are you sure you want to jump in this? Are you new around here? And he's all, no, I want to try it. Bob, he could just be kind of dry and, yeah, I want to give it a try. And he's like, all right, sure. And so the dad next to him, his young son, was like, hey, this is the pro class. You better watch it. It's for the big boys. So the gate dropped and Bob waxed him. I mean, completely waxed him. And somebody Googled, and they found some dirt bike magazine stuff of Bobby. And
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of a funny story. But here's a guy now that he could now come back and have money, and but then again he can get hurt, and I guess there's a there's a balance, checks and balances with that. Um,
Well, it's the difference between being a professional racer and a racing professional. And I think
ah,
I mean a lot of people, especially in the off road side, it makes more sense from just setting yourself up for the future to look at it more as being a racing professional and having something to fall back on, having something outside of dirt bikes. I mean, I've been really fortunate with my dad's business to be able to kind of create this team that's an offshoot of it. So I mean, it's allowed me to make the living that I've had, that I've been able to. And
would you be where you are? Well, let's just like today. Would you be racing this year in Works if you had your dad?
like if he hadn't supported me,
Yeah, if you
no.
didn't have Precision Concepts. And it
No,
was just
after Honda, that would have been it. Because I approached Kawasaki the year I left from Honda, and they had just signed Damon Huffman for 2009,
Yeah.
and so that took the spot that I was hoping for, and so that really would have been it. I probably would have, I had enough money that I could have gotten a bike or two, but based on my performance over the next like 09, 10, 11, over the next 3 years, there was no way I could have kept going.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that would have been bad for me on a personal health level, because it wasn't until like the end of 2011 and into 2012 that I started to figure out what I have between diet, performance, nutrition, health, etc. And so I feel like if I hadn't figured all of that out, I was on the fast track to becoming a diabetic real quick, like in my 30s, because
Wow.
I was addicted to sugar. I was really, really inflamed. I wasn't fat by any means, but my wife and I look back now, and I have my skinny fat photos where you can see my face is just puffy, and I had a lot of inflammation and swelling, and like my
So do you have diabetes right now?
no,
No.
no, but I see that on the wall, just the way I was just pounding through sugar and carbohydrates and just eating the standard
What
way
kind of
kids
diet
eat.
are you on now?
How much time do you have?
Well, the only reason I asked that is I did a New Year's resolution with my partner, and it's the keto diet,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you're pretty well known with that. And you know, I did it for a month,
Mm-hmm.
and I lost 12 pounds, and I think that our industry, if people would just start getting it and dieting better, they'd get better results. They would enjoy racing and motorcycling a lot more.
And they wouldn't get hurt as often.
Yes.
That's a big one for me. I mean, I still get hurt, don't get me wrong, because our sport's dangerous. But for me, I think when your body is healthy, when your body is strong, when you don't have the inflammation in your joints, you're actually more flexible. And so
Do carbs cause inflammation?
carbs are directly responsible for
Ah,
inflammation.
see, you
Any-
see that? Now, this
any-
is a great conversation.
Anybody that doesn't know, the keto diet or ketogenic diet is basically high fat, very, very moderate protein, because protein can be converted into sugar in your body through a process called gluconeogenesis. And then, and it's basically less than, depending on how strict you want to go, like less than 50 grams of net carbs a day. So fiber doesn't really count, but any free carbohydrates like sugars, even the carbs in rice, like brown rice, or complex carbohydrates, quote unquote, they still in your body get broken down to sugar and cause inflammation and cause glycation, which is starting to be looked at by a lot of cutting edge health professionals as the underlying cause of a lot of our diseases.
So bagels, pasta,
All the dirt bike
cereals, oats,
staples,
yeah,
all the dirt bike
yeah.
staples. Pizza for days. I used to eat pizza every day, or every time after a race. Pizza was like the food of choice. I'd go through a large by myself.
Yeah.
And now I look back and just like, what was I thinking? But yeah,
Yeah.
for me, and that was my last point when we were talking about like what the mistakes are. I mean, it sounds harsh to say it, but mistakes that kids are making, and it's unknowingly. They don't know. It's just the way the culture is. But the way our kids are eating is just setting them up for being more susceptible to injuries. Honestly, for it's setting them up for a lot of the issues that they're having earlier, as far as just kind of like the personality issues. Kids are just seem more whiny and more easy to like